and you'll see this video where a woman is explaining how they are trying to get the government's attention because they need help. And they have so far been unsuccessful. So those of you who have a feel for activism, if that's part of your path, if you will, this is a good thing that you could get active about, to help contact, make phone calls to the White House to get funding for these people, because they've lost farmland, and it's really a terrible thing. And as I say, I will post that on my Facebook page for this show, H. Wilkinson Media at Facebook, and it'll come up as the Metaphysical Media page, and it'll be one of several posts, including a post of this podcast. So, all right, then, on we go to our discussion of Earth Day, Part 2, the Gaia effect, and also we're going to bring back, if you will, one of our metaphysical or heroes of consciousness that we have talked about on this show over the years many, many times. His name is Edgar Mitchell, and if you recall his name, he was one of 12 people to walk on the moon, and one of a handful of people to be able to see the Earth from outer space firsthand. I mean, we can all find pictures, but to actually experience it, and at the time when there were no pictures, or very few, to have that experience was very profound. And if you hear the astronauts talk about what they felt when they saw it, there's a true sense of profoundness, a sense of awe. But Edgar Mitchell probably had the biggest effect on Mr. Mitchell, and he probably had the most profound experience. Because to see that round, pale blue sphere, to see all national borders, countries erased, and to just see it as this entity gives you a completely different understanding of what Earth might be. So Edgar Mitchell had what he called a mystical experience, which we've talked about many times on this show. I'll talk about it again. I'm happy to. It's called, in Sanskrit, it's called Savakalpa Samadhi. Savakalpa Samadhi. And in this state, your ego dissolves when confronted with the immensity of the universe. It's the best way to explain it. That's an experience that we can get through meditation. But it's also an experience that many have been talking about recently in connection with, and years ago too, but it's sort of come back into awareness recently with discussions of the use of psychedelics for treatment in many different areas of illness, both psychological and physical. But many people who have had experiences with psychedelics in clinical situations, when asked about them later, talk about this experience, talk about this feeling that they've had that correlates to the Zavakalpa Samadhi experience. But here is what Mr. Mitchell had to say about it on his way home from the moon. The biggest joy was on the way home, he recalled. In my cockpit window, every 2 minutes, the earth, the moon, the sun, and the whole panorama of the heavens. That was a powerful, overwhelming experience. And suddenly I realized that the molecules of my body and the molecules of my spacecraft, the molecules in the body of my partners, were prototyped, manufactured in some ancient generation of stars. I felt an overwhelming sense of oneness, of connectedness. It wasn't them and us. It was, that's me. That's all of it. It's one thing. And it was accompanied by an ecstasy, a sense of, oh my God, wow, yes. An insight, an epiphany. This is the sense of connectedness that I talk about on this show, the highest level of our being. Dr. Mitchell continues, I realized that the story of ourselves as told by science, our cosmology, our religion, was incomplete and likely flawed. I recognized that the Newtonian idea of separate, independent, discrete things in the universe wasn't a fully accurate description. What was needed was a new story of who we are and what we are capable of becoming. Now, this is Dr. Mitchell saying this in the early 1970s, and we have seen these things borne out, particularly in the developments and discoveries in quantum physics, which has showed us that our Newtonian idea, as he states, of things having a separate, independent, and objective existence is not accurate. Because through quantum physics we know that energy is what is the truth of things. Energy is everything. And that energy changes. That energy changes in relation to how we perceive it. And as I mentioned before on the show, since the entire scientific method is pretty much based on that Newtonian idea, that means that the scientific method needs revision, deep revision, which nobody seems to be willing to pony up to. Anyway, I don't want to get off track here. So, in any case, this experience that he had a number of different effects. For Dr. Mitchell, it inspired him to devote his life to exploring consciousness, and he did this by creating an organization called Noetic Society. And you can find them at noetic.org. They've done amazing amounts of research on consciousness, elements of the paranormal, but not just the paranormal, elements of mind-to-mind communication, are amazing abilities that we are only just beginning to discover, and are often, shall we say, repressed, but also just sort of dismissed by a worldview, perhaps, or just a perspective that doesn't want to see them. And I think it has a lot to do with the same reason why there's not more action on reevaluating the scientific method now that we know it's based on something that is not fully accurate. It's because you have to change your belief system. And when you have so much invested in your belief system, you don't want to change it. You don't want to hear the information that makes you want to change it. So, in any case, the idea of seeing the earth as an entity, as one, with that shifted perspective, rather than the perspective that we have from the limited vantage point wherever we are on the earth, and we see, countries and borders and such. This gave birth to a theory called the Gaia theory, or the Gaia effect. Gaia, if you are unfamiliar with the term, was an ancient Greek, she was more than a goddess. She was a primordial deity. She is the ancestral mother of all life, in essence. She's the primal Mother Earth. She's the goddess from whom came the sea and the sky, and also, actually, Uranus is the sky. It was another of the primordial deities, and they were the parents of what came to be known as the Titans and Giants, the precursors of what would become the Olympian gods. But in any case, not to get too off track here, Gaia is the Mother Earth goddess from which all life is supposed to have sprung. So what is the Gaia effect, or the Gaia theory? Well, it was something that was formulated, again, this is happening in the 1970s. It's all connected. Just that moment of seeing the earth in a different way, I think, inspired this change in perspective. But anyway, the gentleman's name was James Lovelock. James Lovelock, he was a chemist. And he had some help with from a microbiologist by the name of Lynn Margulis. And together they named the idea the Gaia principle, or the Gaia theory. And what this principle proposes is that living organisms interact with their inorganic surroundings on Earth and form a synergistic and self-regulating complex system, and that this helps to maintain and perpetuate the conditions for life on the planet. In other words, everything on the planet is interconnected. And this is happening at the same time that Earth Day is just getting off the ground. And this is the point of view that we now look at when we talk about global warming. The regulation of the surface temperatures, the regulation of the Earth, everything is affected by what we do. The Gaian hypothesis suggests that organisms co-evolve with their environment. In other words, they influence the environment, and that environment, in turn, influences their evolution. So the idea of a biosphere now gets a big boost from space exploration, the view of the Earth from another planet, basically, and from the study of science and biology, looking at the interconnectedness of all beings on this planet. And thus this Gaia philosophy, in which all life forms are considered part of one single living planetary being called Gaia,